President Marcos's state visit to China kicks off tomorrow. This is also his first visit to a non-ASEAN member in the region. What could take place in this visit to a global power? Lee Kuan Yew School of Public Policy Associate Professor Eduardo Araral joins us now from Singapore for his insights. Professor, Happy New Year to you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Happy New Year, Rico. Good to see you all again.
This will be a big test for Marcos as he's expected to discuss the thorny maritime issues with Xi Jinping.
Yes, Rico. I think this is very important because this is the first trip of Marcos to China, so it's supposed to set the tone for his remaining 5 to 6 years in power, and they're supposed to sign something like 10 to 14 agreements, from agriculture, renewable energy, maritime security, and how to deal with issues in the South China Sea. So this is a very important trip, Rico.
This will also be a challenge, Professor, in Marcos's ability to strike a friendlier tone while juggling loyalties to the U.S., who he praised during his last visit.
It's not really that challenging, Rico, because you're not really forced to choose between the U.S. or China. You just choose the interest of the Philippines. So the Philippines is a treaty ally of the United States, but China is also a trade partner of the Philippines, and it's a big neighbor. So I think there's this misconception, Rico, that we have to choose between the United States and China. So the question is whether we should, tilt the balance here, or it would be. So it's really a simple choice, Rico. What is the best interest of the Philippines? So we choose those decisions that really matter to the Philippines. In this case, we need energy, we need agriculture, we need investments, all of the stuff. If the United States can give them, that's good. If China can come in, that's also good, Rico.
All right, let's focus on the West Philippine Sea, because in mid-December, Professor, we heard the Philippine military and several local senators denouncing China's incursion into the West Philippine Sea. Is Beijing really listening to our concerns? Are they really taking us seriously?
No, they're not, Rico, to put it bluntly.
Right.
Because on matters of security, they take a realist, hardcore position. And their position really, Rico, is to get rid of the United States as a maritime power in the region. And that means taking control of the South China Sea.
Yeah.
And so we are just a collateral damage in that bigger equation. So we can complain all the time, but those maritime vessels, those Chinese militia will never leave that place, Rico. So we can have all communication lines, we can talk until the roosters come home, Rico, but I think that situation will never change. They will never leave that place, Rico.
So, I mean, what all these senators said, criticizing, castigating the Chinese, will just basically fall on deaf ears, because it seems like even China's foreign ministry, Professor, is shrugging us off, saying the claims are purely made out of thin air, and dismiss the reports as fake news. Are we fake news?
Well, it is what it is, Rico. We can, our senators can complain. So China wants to keep the relationship on an even keel. They want to have communication, all these things. So I think that's the equilibrium, Rico.
So will President Marcos?
They will be there. We complain, and that's always the case, Rico. That would always be the equilibrium that we will see in the years to come.
Do you think
it will always be like that?
So do you think, Professor, Marcos, when he goes there, together with all of these politicians, will voice out what the senators have said, all the criticisms? Will he tell them?
Yeah, so I think the Chinese ambassador to the Philippines would have to manage this. But nothing will change, Rico. Nothing will change. China will not change its strategy with regards to the South China Sea. The Philippines will always complain, push back. China will push, and we will push back. I think that's the state of the situation, Rico, in the years to come.
Okay. It looks like nothing will be resolved here. On the flip side, Professor, is it the right time for the president to depart for China when we are facing many problems on the domestic front? You have the airport problem, you have soaring food prices and shortages, rising inflation, etc., etc., plus the rising number of COVID cases in China.
Well, this meeting has been set sometime last year, Rico. So it's not the right time to forgo the visit. Without the visit, Rico, the price of onions and all these calamities will always happen in the Philippines.
Yes.
So might as well he goes to China and solve some problems, Rico, like energy. You know, the price of onion, Rico, in China is only 40, 50 pesos per kilo.
That's right.
So maybe the president can bring home. Yeah, maybe the president can bring home a few import some red onions from China.
But Professor,
go ahead.
I've spoken to a lot of farmers about these smuggled onions, and they said most of them come from China.
That's true, Rico. The onions here in Singapore cost about 60 pesos per kilogram, imported all the way from China. So if we import it directly from China, it probably costs about 30, 40 pesos. And it's controlled by, according to Congressman Joey Salceda, I think a few syndicates, Chinese-led syndicates in the Philippines are controlling the smuggling. Not just of onions, Rico, but a lot of things.
Yeah.
Hopefully this issue of smuggling can also be addressed, Rico.
But the president has already met Xi Jinping in previous trips in the last quarter of last year. Aren't the people's issues more important than a foreign trip, which can be moved to another date?
Yeah, but that's a very short, informal meeting, Rico. But this one, he's the only guest, and they will have a series of a lot more substantive discussions rather than just the side meetings that they had in Bangkok, Rico. So I think this trip is important, Rico, despite all the problems that you face in the Philippines, because you know the problems of energy, agriculture, renewables. The relationship with China is very important, Rico. You cannot just put this aside simply because you are faced with a lot of firefighting in the Philippines.
Thank you so much, Professor, for your insights. Lee Kuan Yew School of Public Policy Associate Professor Eduardo Araral joining us from Singapore.